Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're at. Time to get some more of Elvis in June in the Twilight of Memory read. I got to find where I stopped. We read Rebel Without a Cause. I believe, we read chapter 32, Skin Flicks. That's the one we ended on. Thanks for watching the conversation with Bart Herbison. I hope you really tune into the Craig Campbell one as well. Elvis would recommend it. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. Elvis was always encouraging and positive and supportive to other artists. That's one of the reasons why I love Elvis so much. So if you're a true Elvis fan, you'll watch conversations like that about Craig Campbell, or when I bring on Rivers Rutherford or Big Vinny or Michael Peterson, because Elvis appreciated real, true talent, and I will never bring anybody on this channel that I don't think is one of the most talented or one of the most intelligent. Like when I bring on Derry Matera, or when I bring on Bart Herbison, or when I bring on Billy Stanley. I'm very picky. I could have tons of people on my channel all of the time. I only choose who I want to bring on this channel. That I feel like Elvis would appreciate it. So, all right. So let's get started. Thank you for picking up copies of Elvis in 55. Elvis in 56 will be out in June. Thanks for continuing to buy The Night Elvis Saved Christmas, my Easter book, the Valentine's book. It's funny that I'm still getting copies that get picked up all the time. And also, if you go to joesinsrareelvisphotos.com, you'll see coffee mugs, you'll see other stuff. So joesinsrareelvisphotos.com. All right, thanks so much. And thanks for the reminders to read these books, okay? You never bother me when you ask me to read them or give me a push, okay? Thank you to members. Thank you to all you new subscribers and existing subscribers. I'll be doing a comment video later on. Okay, so chapter 33. Hollywood Smiles. Elvis had given me and Pat his master bedroom, so naturally, we were also using the master bath. Our personal things were neatly grouped on the long ceramic tiled vanity. One morning, while brushing my teeth, I noticed a glass of water with something soaking in it. Looking through the side of the glass, I thought they were false teeth, but when I looked down into it, the teeth seemed to disappear. I learned later that the curved, thin strip of teeth belonged to Nick. They were his Hollywood smile. Now, Nick gave us a demonstration by slipping the strip over his natural teeth and smiling like the Cheshire Cat. The teeth were a definite improvement over Nick's not-so-bright smile. Elvis then announced that he, too, had some Hollywood teeth. Now, I didn't believe him until he pulled two tiny teeth from his mouth. See, he used the cosmetic caps whenever he was in front of the camera. Smiling with and without the teeth, he showed me the difference, which I thought was negligible. See, Elvis had a pretty smile without them. His two natural teeth next to his front teeth were a tiny bit smaller than they should have been. At least that's what the Hollywood experts thought, and the caps evened them out. That's some inside information that we've never heard before. And I believe Susan's one of the folks that asked me to keep reading this book. So, Susan, we just learned something new, thanks to you, right? However, he had one major problem with his caps. He couldn't eat with them. And Elvis was always snacking on something. Well, he had several sets made, but they were always getting either lost or broken. He would remove the teeth, put them in his shirt pocket, and forget about them. Now, every time Alberta did the laundry, the teeth were either broken or they went straight down the drain. He was losing, on average, a pair a day. Now, one afternoon, clowning around, we put on a pair of boxing gloves and used the empty swimming pool as our ring. His suggestion. Because I was hitting him and running away, and in the pool, I couldn't run very far. Showing a little mercy, he used only his left hand. Now, I connected with a good left hook right to his mouth, and he immediately called for a timeout. Excuse me, I got allergies going on. He removed his cosmetic caps and carefully placed them on the top rung of the pool ladder. Now, Pat came out to watch the boxing match and decided a safe place to sit was between the handrails of the ladder. She stepped on one of the caps, crushing it like an eggshell, and knocked the other one into the pool. Well, like Humpty Dumpty, it didn't survive the long fall. Now, the day had just begun, and already he'd lost 4 teeth. His average was improving. Growing up with a brother who'd been a Golden Gloves boxing champion, this wasn't the first time I engaged in the sport of pugilism, and I was pretty adept, defensively as well as offensively. See, my brother had a speed bag, a punching bag, mounting in our backyard, and I could literally make it sing. This small little punching bag, the speed bag, when you know, not the big punching bag. I don't think I read that right. Elvis had to start using both hands to protect himself from my straight left jab, countering with his right, which was supposed to be behind his back. He hit me a few times in the face, forcing me to run up the slope to the shallow end of the pool. Lovey saved the day by telling us to come in and get dressed. They were a rough bunch. She was a rough bunch. Can you imagine that? Now, boxing gloves, they're soft enough if you're not punching with 800 pounds or 1,000 pounds of power like these heavyweights do. I mean, but still, I mean, you can get your head snapped back with just a small little punch. So she was a tough one. We were all invited to have dinner with some friends of Mr. and Mrs. Presley, and she insisted we wear our Sunday-to-go meeting clothes. Elvis looked truly beautiful in his charcoal suit. "You two have got to be the most beautiful couple in the whole world," Levy said, looking at me and Elvis standing side by side. In case some of y'all are new to this book, click on Joe Sin's Rarest Photos, then scroll down the playlist over on the right, click on it, and look for the June and Elvis series. And sort it by oldest to newest. That's the first reading to the most current reading. And Lovey is Gladys, okay? "Ain't that the truth?" the normally taciturn Mr. Presley exclaimed. Now, Pat made a similar comment while Nick, silent for a change, flashed his Hollywood smile. It's really difficult for me to read. Excuse me. With allergies going on. That's the truth of the matter. I feel like I'm chewing up the words sometimes and saying things like changed instead of change. Okay, we'll get back to it. All right. I had deliberately chosen a royal blue dress, my own creation, because of its similarity to the dress Nick had brought Elvis as a souvenir. Now, the dress had 3/4 sleeves, and the slit up the side wasn't quite as high, but otherwise they were very alike in design. So far, Nick had only seen me in casual, loose-fitting clothes. Now, not that I valued his opinion, but suddenly I wanted him to know that I could fill out a dress too. Feeling confident about my appearance, I returned Nick's Hollywood smile with a vindictive little wink. Now, I can't remember the names of the people who had invited us to dinner, but I do remember referring to them as Mr. and Mrs. Nutriment. The Presley's friends were excited about their corporation being involved in a new product, Nutriment, a food supplement that provided a completely balanced nutritional meal in a can. Now, you could drink it in place of a meal to lose weight or with a meal to gain weight. This turned out to be the main topic of conversation at the dinner table. What's that can that people drink to lose weight or to supplement their food? It's not Nutriment, but I'm wondering if it developed into that. What do you think? Can you all remember the name of that? I don't quite know what the can is. Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers. Okay. Some of y'all probably beat me to it. All right. So let's see here. Mrs. Presley, knowing how silly we could be at times, made us promise to be on our best behavior. We arrived just in time to be seated at a long dining room table covered with beautiful lace tablecloth. "Make sure your food stays on your plate, June," I said to myself. A centerpiece of freshly cut flowers and silver candlesticks complemented the elegantly set table. Now, it was another first for me. I had never before dined on fine china, eaten with silver cutlery, or drunk from crystal glasses. Mrs. Presley had nice dishes, but hadn't as yet gotten into the finer things. A gorgeous crystal chandelier hung directly over the table, and an array of desserts were arranged on the buffet with candelabra on each end. It was awe-inspiring. The Presleys and the Nutriments did most of the talking, mostly about business. Elvis said an occasional, "Yes, ma'am," "No, sir," and "Thank you." I just smiled a lot. Before starting with the fruit cup, Elvis inconspicuously removed his two little teeth and handed them to me. "Hold this, baby. I can't afford to lose another pair," he whispered in my ear. Now, I didn't have a pocket, and the housekeeper had taken my purse and coat, so I placed the teeth in my lap under my lace-edged napkin. After the main meal, Mrs. Nutriment asked us to select the dessert of our choice from the buffet. Now, remembering the teeth Elvis had entrusted to me, I held them in my hand before standing up. Elvis wanted a piece of chocolate cake, and I asked if I could slice it for him. I needed 2 hands to slice the cake and place it on the plate, so I put the 2 teeth in my mouth for safekeeping. I returned to the table with our cake and sat down, wondering what to do with the teeth. When I was sure that nobody was looking, I placed 1 tooth on the side of each of my mouth, holding them in place with my lips. I looked just like a vampire. Pat and Nick, sitting across from me, and Elvis just happened to be looking in my direction. But Elvis was so busy enjoying his cake, I had to nudge him to get his attention. He took one look, gulped the bite of cake, and screamed with laughter. The Presleys and Nutriments were standing at the buffet trying to decide which dessert to select and had no idea what the laughter was even about. Knowing we were supposed to be on our best behavior made matters worse. I excused myself and went into the adjoining room, Pat, Nick, and Elvis following right behind. The harder we tried to get ourselves under control, the harder we laughed. We returned to the dining room, each of us refusing to look at the others, and took our seats. Up to that point, everyone being so prim and proper, the dinner party had been as stiff as an overstarched collar. My silly stunt turned out to be a great icebreaker, and Elvis insisted I do it again. "Well, it's about time you kids relaxed and had some fun," Mr. Nutriment said, laughing as hard as the rest of us. After midnight the same night, the 6 of us went to a private, rough-cut screening of Love Me Tender. Now, the film only lasted about 30 minutes, but this time, the film only lasted about, so rough-cut screening, okay, so 30 minutes, so just the best parts. But this was the first time Elvis had seen himself on the big screen. He was not overly excited about the way he looked and complained of things no one else had even noticed. Lovey and I both tried to assure him that the movie was good, and that he was good too. But good wasn't what he wanted. He wanted great. "If I could just get them to cut some of them damn silly songs, I'd like it a whole lot better," he complained. On the way back to the car, Elvis got between me and his mother and put his arms around both of us. "I got my 2 favorite girls. What more could I ask for? Everything's going to be all right, okay, Mama? All right, June?" He was trying to convince us all, and Mr. Presley, Pat, Nick, and I were Mr. Presley, Pat, and Nick were walking right behind us. "Everything will be okay," Mr. Presley and Pat agreed. Nick took a different line. Nick said, "Quit being so damn hard on yourself, man, and give it some time. I'd give anything to have a leading role. I've been working my butt off trying to prove myself and getting nothing but bit parts that end up on the cutting room floor. After this, you can call your own shots about what you like and what you don't like. You proved yourself as an actor, man. Don't worry about it." Now, that sounded very encouraging and supporting, right? It's not the way June took it. That's how she took it. I immediately detected a note of jealousy in Nick's voice. But Elvis, hanging on his every word, took it as a compliment. Now, that's how I took it as well, by the way. Whatever it was, what Nick had said made Elvis feel better about himself. I felt the urge to look Nick in the face and tell him to shut the heck up, but remembering my promise to be nice to the lonesome little guy, he needs friends, I clenched my teeth and kept walking. Let's read that again. Nick says, quit being so hard on yourself, man, and give it some time. I'd give anything to have a leading role. I've been working my butt off trying to prove myself and getting nothing but bit parts that end up on the cutting room floor. After this, you can call your own shots about what you like and what you don't like. You've proved yourself as an actor, man. Don't worry about it. There's been some comments left on some of these, the last couple reading, where some folks take offense to kind of how June presents Nick in this book. Basically defending Nick. And I've got to say that after reading that, I kind of agree that there was something going on, and I get it. And I get why June would be upset with Nick. First off, I mean, Nick's bringing a dress from Natalie Wood while he's dating June. I get that, but on this comment, I mean, that's encouraging. Yeah, I mean, Nick is talking about how he struggled to been trying to make it, and he was in Rebel Without a Cause. I think I mistakenly said Giant. I thought he might have been in both Giant and Rebel Without a Cause, but just Rebel Without a Cause, next to James Dean. How can you shine next to James Dean? You can't. Well, Elvis could have. All right, so the next morning, I phoned the airlines and made reservations for me and Pat to fly home on the same day Elvis was scheduled to leave for New York to do the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, insisting I go with him to New York, Elvis phoned the airlines and canceled my reservations. You got plenty of time to decide, June. You don't need to make reservations now, he said, pleased with himself for taking charge. But the airlines told me to make my reservations at least 2 days in advance. I'm just doing what I was told, said June. Relax, baby. You can get a reservation 30 minutes before you leave, so don't pay any attention to them. I know. I didn't know about this New York thing. It was all news to me. The thought of being so far away from home frightened me, and I kept thinking of all the reasons why I shouldn't go. What lady out there in this audience at that point in time wouldn't want to go with Elvis wherever he went? Now, I don't know. Obviously, we know Elvis and June didn't end up together. You know, y'all know this, obviously. It's history. So I'm not spoiling anything. But there's several times in this book that she didn't want to go to L.A. when Elvis wanted her to go. Now she doesn't want to go to New York. It's a wonder why maybe Elvis didn't choose her in a sense. I mean, I know, well, we're going to find out what happened towards the end of this book, even though I've done a video on this prior, about 1.5 years ago. But all I know is that when you're in love with somebody, you want to be with them at all times, wherever they are. That's just the truth. That is the truth. Every one of you that has experienced love, true love, you know, it hurts to be away from the person. And my wife and I, we're blessed, 20 years. And I've been, with exception of 45 days when I had to take a job on the road without her, right around year 7 of our marriage. Or maybe before that, maybe year 5. We haven't spent a day apart. And I get to be around my wife, and she gets to be around me quite often because, you know, we have that sort of lifestyle. So I don't understand this. I don't understand why June has any reservations of being next to Elvis, being with Elvis, especially if she thought the Colonel Parker didn't want them to be together and was trying to break them up all the time. Anyways, so let's get back into the book. For one thing, my mother had agreed to let me spend 10 days in Memphis with Elvis and his family. I couldn't go to the biggest city in the world. I was a small town girl. And besides, I didn't have enough warm clothes to be going way up north. Excuses. Elvis didn't take the word no very well and thought my excuses lame. Hey, me and Elvis think alike right there. If I ever get to talk to June, I mean, I'm going to ask her if she regrets some of these thoughts that she had. And I don't know whether she went to New York or not, but I'm almost guessing she didn't at this point. June's just like me, Elvis. I don't like going to big cities either, so leave her alone, Levy said in my defense. Okay, if you won't go to me, at least go with me, at least stay here until I get back, and you'll get to meet Natalie. She's coming to visit for a few days, Elvis said, thinking I would be thrilled about meeting a big movie star like Natalie Wood. Nick butted in so fast I didn't even have time to answer. Wait a minute, Elvis. If June's going to stay, I'd better call Natalie so she can make arrangements to come at a later time. You don't have room enough for all of us. Don't worry, Nick. I'm not staying, I said, leaving the kitchen and going to Elvis's room. See what I'm saying? Come on. Have some survival skills, woman. Once again, yeah, I don't know. I just don't get it. Love is love. I would be going straight to New York, or I'd be staying. You know? I felt my blood boiling when I picked up the phone and made my reservations again. Elvis and Nick, following behind, came into the room just as I was hanging up the phone. Elvis told Nick to leave us alone for a while, and not in a polite tone. Please stay, baby. I want you to be here when I get back. I've already made my mind up, Elvis. When you leave, I'm going home. You heard Nick. There isn't room enough for me and Natalie. Baby, I didn't invite Natalie. Nick invited her. He can call and tell her not to come. It's all for publicity purposes anyway. Nothing more, I promise. And I remember reading something somewhere where, boy, Gladys was not happy with Natalie Wood prancing around in lingerie at the house. To be perfectly honest, Elvis, I'd like to meet Natalie, but there's not enough room here for me and Nick Adams. When he leaves, I'll come back, I answered angrily. Okay, June, if that's the way you want it, he said sharply. Well, that's the way it's going to be, I answered, and even more sharply. When Elvis left the room, I threw myself across the bed, and buried my face in the pillow, too angry to cry. She was a firecracker, wasn't she? She is a firecracker, I should say. She's still alive. We were polite but cool to each other for the rest of the day. It didn't take long for Lovey to notice something was wrong between Elvis and me. Come have a cup of coffee, little Satin. Let's talk about what's bothering you two, Lovey said, stroking my face. I asked if she'd seen the dress in Elvis's closet and told her about Nick inviting Natalie and his comment about not having enough room for all of us. After getting that off my chest, I began to get a bad case of the self-pity and had a hard time of talking through a quivering lower lip. Nick insisted there wasn't room for Natalie if I was going to be here. He said he'd call Natalie and tell her to come later, after I was gone. He keeps telling me that in order for Elvis to get ahead of in his business. He has to be seen with other girls and not just me all the time. He thinks I'm not good for Elvis's career, and he's trying to come between us, Lovey. I can tell, I said between sobs. Now, little Satin, and dry your pretty little eyes, and don't worry about a thing. I'll take care of Elvis. I just wish he'd been a little more careful about choosing his friends. She handed me a Kleenex. I don't think Elvis chose Nick, Lovey. I think Nick chose Elvis. Gladys said, I think you're right. He's such a pushy little fella. I wish someone would let me know something once in a while. I never know what's going on around here anymore. Don't worry, Satin. Lovey's going to fix everything, I promise. By this time, I was emotionally drained, so Lovey suggested I go into Elvis's room and take a little nap. To avoid seeing Elvis, who was sitting in the den, I went through the living room and down the hallway to his room. I didn't have to worry about Nick seeing me in tears. He was out at the front gate, bantering with the girls as usual. Instead of laying across the bed, I stripped down to my undies and snuggled under the cover in fetal position, falling sound asleep. Now, I've been sleeping a good while when Elvis came in the room and woke me with a kiss. I love you more than anything else in the world, baby. Let's not fight. I love you too, Elvis, and I hate fighting. He lay next to me on top of the covers and kissed me slightly, kissing my slightly swollen, bloodshot eyes, commenting how much bluer my eyes were with a touch of red. We settled our differences and walked out of the room an hour later, holding hands. Lovey was so happy to see we'd patched things up that she stood up from her usual spot at the kitchen and came over between us, hugging and kissing us both. Everything had been going great between Elvis and me until Nick barged into our lives. I was determined to get things back the way they were, by pretending he didn't exist. However, he did serve one good purpose. He was good company for Pat. Not having much else to do, Pat would join Nick at the front gate and visit with the fans too. She was even signing autographs along with Nick. Tired of being cooped up all day, Elvis was looking for an excuse to get out of the house, so he called Nick and Pat inside. Let's go see what the competition's doing, Elvis suggested. The four of us jumped in the pink car and drove down to a downtown record shop. Pat and I stopped in the front of the store and looked at some merchandise at the display case, and Nick was right on Elvis's heels. He was worse than a bloodhound, and followed him to the record section in the back of the store. Now, feeling a need to treat myself to something nice, I asked the clerk to show me a tiny transistor radio that caught my eye. No larger than the palm of my hand, the radio was a pale lavender, almost completely covered with rhinestones. I said, "Thank you," and handed it right back. The price tag was lots more than the $51 I had in my purse. Really, 1956. She had $51. How much was that radio? At a record shop. I feel like if a house back then was what? $10,000, $20,000? Was it $500 or $1,000 for what was that radio? The palm of her hand. Huh. We joined Elvis in the record section and helped pick out some new releases. We left the store with at least 20 new singles, none of which were Elvis's, and 3 new albums, including a new Platters album, to replace the one we'd worn out from playing all the time. We were listening to the records in Elvis's room, and he waited until my favorite song, Unchained Melody, dropped on the turntable, and then, singing along with the record, he handed me a small package wrapped in white paper and tied up with pink satin ribbon. Happy birthday, baby. I know your birthday isn't until next month, but I probably won't get to spend it with you. Thank you, my love, I said with a kiss, clutching the package to my breast. I was going to wait and open it on my birthday, but he insisted I open it right then. It was the little rhinestone radio I had admired in the store. I saw you looking at it when we weren't in the record shop. I hope you like it, he said with a big smile on his face. Like it? I don't like it, I love it, I shouted. I tore myself from his arms and ran to the kitchen to show Lovey. Now, I saw it already, June. I'm the one who wrapped it. It's the cutest little thing I've ever seen, she said, her smile beaming. Now, I turned it on, and it just happened upon a station playing Hound Dog, of all things. I ran back to the bedroom, yelling for Elvis to listen. Now, Nick, the a-hole, got up from the floor and turned on the volume of the hi-fi. I felt like telling him to go back outside and sign more autographs, that the fans weren't choosy. They were even glad to meet Pat's autograph. Instead, I held my tongue and pretended he didn't exist. Elvis had to go with me into the hallway to hear what the little radio was playing. Nick pulled a few more underhanded stunts, always behind Elvis's back, and I tried to ignore them. I could never figure out what Nick had against me, but I was determined to be the bigger person than he, and was nice to the little guy, because Elvis had asked me to be. Due to the pre-Sullivan photo session and news interviews arranged by Colonel Parker, our final 2 days in Memphis were maddening. Reporters and photographers were arriving by the carloads, each one clamoring for Elvis's undivided attention. Even a representative from RCA was there, presenting Elvis with a gold record of Love Me Tender. It was a real circus, but then, of course, that's what the Colonel was famous for. Elvis took it all in stride, and he had no other choice, though. On the morning of our last day, I woke at the crack of dawn and couldn't go back to sleep. I crept quietly into the kitchen, thinking I was the first one to get up to put on a pot of coffee, but Lovey had already beat me to it. See, knowing Elvis was leaving for New York that afternoon, she too had trouble sleeping. This will probably be our last meal together for a while, so I want it to be especially nice, Gladys said, planning a big breakfast. She did a quick inventory of the refrigerator and pulled a new sack of flour and box of grits from the kitchen pantry. We had grits for breakfast more often than we had fried chicken for supper. Like a true Southern grit eater, Elvis would make a hole, and before I read that, this is how I eat my grits. And I don't know whether it's because maybe I knew how Elvis ate grits, but there's a couple ways I like to eat my grits. Tons of butter, tons of sugar. Or there's a place here in southern Tennessee that has tomato grits. They're very kind of spicy, tomato flavored. Oh, Lord. I could go and order 2 or 3 bowls. I'm kind of like that, though. I've always been obsessive sometimes about certain foods, and I'll eat them over and over again. Mashed potatoes and brown gravy. I used to go to Denny's. I'm talking when I was 18, and I'd order 6 bowls with extra brown gravy, and that's what I'd eat. Okay, let's get it. Like a true Southern grit eater. I'm hoping we have some similarities here, you know what I'm saying? Elvis would make a hole in a mound of grits with the back of a spoon and fill the hole with margarine. Elvis hadn't yet acquired a taste for the real thing, complaining that real butter always tasted stale. Lovey happily agreed when I suggested hashed brown potatoes instead of grits, and I volunteered to make them. I'm going to miss you, June. As soon as Nick leaves, I want you to come back, okay? When you're here, I don't worry about Elvis as much, Gladys said. Don't worry, Lovey. I'll be back, if for no other reason than to visit you, I answered, giving her a kiss on the cheek. By the time we finished our second cup of coffee, everyone was awake and had gathered in the kitchen. Elvis warned his mother that the media circus would be starting at 10 a.m., and if we wanted to have breakfast without any interruptions, we should eat early. I went into the shower and made myself presentable for the onslaught. I packed all my things and put the outfit on I had saved for my plane trip home, and when I returned to the kitchen, Elvis gave me a wolf whistle. Even Nick complimented me on the way I looked, much to my surprise. Now, whether he was sincere or not, I couldn't tell. And I really didn't care. I knew that he was glad to be getting away from me, and the feeling was mutual. Elvis was right about the circus. By 11 a.m., the house was a zoo, almost as maddening as the day before. We did manage to steal 15 minutes of time alone, locked in Elvis's bathroom, before heading in opposite directions. As I fastened my seatbelt for the flight home, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was already missing Elvis, but I was more than ready for some peace and quiet. My heart ached for Elvis. I was wishing he could have some peace and quiet too, but I knew for him there was no escape. That was a decently long chapter. I want to talk just a teeny bit before I close this video up. I know I sound a bit critical of June at times. You know, and I suspect some of y'all do as well. I know June enjoyed Elvis, and Elvis enjoyed June. Lots of the words love going around to each other. And yeah, they're young. Elvis was 21 and 56, and I think June was 19 or 20. But gosh, you know, the way she wrote it. Now, I don't know whether she wrote it because she's prideful, like she seems to be in this book, right? A little prideful. And I think that maybe she's got a right to be a bit prideful. Everybody has the rights to feel a certain way, feel their importance. She didn't like Nick, obviously. This whole Natalie Wood thing. Now, was Nick trying to find a way for him to be bigger in Hollywood by trying to set up Natalie with Elvis for real? Maybe. I think that there's something to that. Now, she's not necessarily alluding to that, but that's what I think. And I think that instead of just trusting Elvis, I think that she allowed her pride to get the best of her. She didn't go to New York. In fact, she was invited to New York before this whole Nick and Natalie Wood conversation came up, where Natalie came to Memphis. And then she chose not to be there when Natalie was there. Now, I get it. You know, especially if you know that you believe that Elvis wants to be with her, you know, but had to be with Natalie for some photos. And I don't think there's any pictures of Natalie and him kissing. You know, I recall, like, Yvonne Lime, the beautiful blonde that was with Elvis on the motorcycle. Hannah Melcher, well, not on the motorcycle, I'm sorry, in the car, the picture. Hannah Melcher, who's on the motorcycle with Elvis. This is all 56, 57. It's true. Elvis was with a lot of these women for publicity. That's just the truth of the matter. He didn't have romantic flings with them. And unfortunately, I don't think June believed that. And she was maybe just too much of a jealous type. We're going to end up seeing what the end of the story amounts to be. And as you can see, we've read this much, and there's this much left. Not much left. We're from page 276 to 319. That's not many pages. In fact, I'm going to read some more to y'all, okay? A picture is worth 1,000 words. This is chapter 34. Elvis had been after me to have a studio picture taken, so several days after I returned home from Memphis, I called a studio for an appointment. This picture has got to be special. I'm sending it to my boyfriend, I informed the photographer, as he switched on light after light. I just so happen to know who that is, June, he replied, studying my face from every angle. It seems like everyone in Biloxi knew who my boyfriend was, unless they were dead or illiterate. What kind of picture did you have in mind, June? Serious or smiling, he asked. Nude, I answered quickly, then laughed. Just kidding. Just kidding. What other choices do I have? I'm so disappointed, that June and Elvis didn't end up together. And I've read Elvis and Kathy to y'all. I've read Are You Lonesome Tonight with Lucy DeBarban. And some people don't believe in that about Lucy's story. But Lucy had 3 or 4 children, 3 children before Elvis. If you believe that the story is true, it just wasn't a lifestyle Elvis was going to be in. It just wasn't. He might have wanted to in a different world. I could see that. I got one fly in this garage, and I got a bug zapper up there, and it's not taking care of that fly. But she was a Spitfire. This June was a Spitfire, and she's gorgeous, No wonder Elvis was attracted to her, right? You could tell, that there was attraction there. I mean, it's a loss for both of them. That's my general opinion. They both missed out. I know I haven't really showed y'all many photos, so I'm going to show them while we continue to read and try to give my voice a tiny rest. Before we continue reading more. And hopefully I'll have the right angle for this for you to read it all. I might have to edit this video later on and flip it around. I mean, if you made it this far into the video, y'all deserve to see the photos, right? For those of you that have been asking me to read this book, and, some folks are going to read the comments and think you're complaining. I get it. I really was on quite a roll reading a lot. And unfortunately, my lifestyle kind of changed a bit and I didn't have as much time. So I apologize, and I get it. I get some of the grumbling or some of the questions or the asking. I don't get offended by it, okay? I love Elvis, and I know y'all love Elvis. So I want to do what y'all would like me to do, which is read more and finish these books, and I'm going to. Trying to give you all time to read some of the captions. And it looks like the final picture here is the studio picture that June took. Look at that picture. Very reminiscent of a movie star. Looks like she got a tear on her cheek. Could be wrong. We're going to get back to reading here and we'll find out. Okay. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Okay, so, yeah, okay. Well, I've never taken a picture of someone crying, he teased. Why not? That might be interesting. After snapping a few serious pictures, he left the room. Returning with 2 large squares of black fabric, he placed one around my shoulders, securing it with a safety pin, and draped the other on my head like a scarf. Except for the pixie bangs on my forehead, I looked like a nun. Almost perfect, he exclaimed, leaving the room again, returning this time with a jar of Vaseline. We need a little shine, he said, dripping his finger in the jar and applying it to my cheekbones, nose, and chin. Okay, June, do you think you can give me some tears? Well, I looked directly into the bright lights, trying not to blink, and sure enough, the tears began to flow. That's a good little trick. I wonder if some of the Hollywood actors and actresses use that, because gosh, some of those can cry on demand, it seems like. Great, keep it up. I'd like to catch a tear on your cheek. He was clicking the shutter as fast as he could. Now, we had one minor problem. Along with the tears came a runny nose. I'm sniffling between clicks while he's dabbing a Kleenex under my nose. Needless to say, when I left the studio, I looked like I was suffering from a broken heart. I returned home just in time to receive a call from Elvis, and I was still sniffling, and he was concerned that I might be coming down with a cold. Well, I didn't say anything about the photo session, but I did tell my mother that my mother had surprised us by coming home with our first television set. She had been planning to buy it for Christmas, but after learning Elvis was going to be appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show, she had it delivered early. It was a small set, black and white, but it was all ours. Great news, baby. That means you got to watch the Sullivan Show. Did I do okay? He said, not waiting for a yes or no. You were wonderful. You just weren't on long enough, I complained. Could you tell I was nervous? If you'd been there, you could have held my hand. Well, I was wishing I was there the whole time I was watching the show, I confessed. Yeah, well, I wish it don't make it so, baby. I wish you hadn't been so quick to say no. Cool it, Nick. I'm trying to talk to on the phone, if you don't mind, Elvis yelled. Well, I could clearly hear that Nick Adams was in the background, speaking loudly in his Mr. Magoo voice. So I don't know how to do Mr. Magoo, but this was what Nick was saying. You had your chance, baby. You blew it. Mr. Magoo was saying, making sure it was loud enough for me to hear. No idea whether that's... I just had to use a different voice. Are you back in Memphis, Elvis? Is Nick Adams still with you? If so, will you tell him to kiss my... Please. Damn it, Nick, shut the F up. You could have been there with me, June, he said, anger still in his voice. Gosh. You know, some folks would say this is a bit of a toxic relationship. It's not. It shouldn't have been. But Elvis wanted June to be with him. June didn't have no responsibilities. She didn't have a reason to stay home. It's not like she had some big important job to go to. It was pride, I guess. Or was it insecurity? It couldn't have been jealousy. Jealousy was going to usually makes you cling to that person to make sure nobody else can get in there. But Elvis is clearly upset here. This is the biggest thing I get from this book. And it's kind of the pattern, same pattern in this book as I see in Are You Lonesome Tonight, where Elvis is asking somebody to be with him, and that somebody, showing my belly there, sorry. Oh, I'm going to have to go on a diet before I go to the beach next month. I think I've been eating too much grits and mashed potatoes and gravy and eggs and bacon and waffles and all that southern stuff I like to eat. The pattern, the pattern with Lucy DeBarban in the book, which was written 10 years before this. This book was written in 97, and that was written in 87. So it's not like Lucy would be copying June, and June would have no reason to copy Lucy, right? This is a pattern. Elvis wants to be with somebody, and that somebody doesn't choose to be with them. How could that be? How is that so? June says, what else can I say? I'm sorry I wasn't. Well, it's probably for the best. The Colonel's been giving me a hard time. He found out you were in Memphis, so we're going to have to cool it for a while, baby. I'm sorry. Now, was Elvis ticked off still? And is he pushing back on June right there? And that's not the truth? And he just was like, you know what? If this girl doesn't want to be with me, I feel like it might be a little bit of that young relationship anger, you know? Every time I heard the Colonel's name, I could feel the blood rush to my face. I held the receiver to my ear in silence. I've got to do what I got to do, baby. I'm sorry. I wish you'd stayed. Natalie will be here this evening. Boy, Elvis is pouring it on there. I think he's ticked off. I think he's really ticked off. And I think that he doesn't believe that June feels the same way for him as he feels for her. What else can I say? I mean, think about it. Elvis is inviting her. She says no. Then he wants her to stay. If she's a small town girl not wanting to go to a big city, well, he gives her a second option. Stay there and wait for me when I come back so you can be here. He's not trying to send her away, but who's insisting on going away and taking herself out of the equation? June is. Sorry, June, if you're watching this video, you probably realize all this as well. And maybe you're happy with whatever the decisions you made later on. All right. So, well, like you said, Elvis, it's probably for the best. I'll be talking to you, June. Just remember, I love you, baby. Well, I love you too, Elvis. Say hello to Natalie for me. I hung up, not wanting to hear the dial tone. I felt as though I'd been talking to two separate personalities. I was too angry to cry. Well, keeping up with Elvis and his two house guests during the week, via the Memphis Commercial Appeal, I read that Elvis had bought motorcycles for his guests so they could go riding around the city. Big effing deal, I thought to myself angrily. Elvis called to say he loved me the same day his companions left, making me feel secure again. Well, we talked for several hours about nothing in particular. Mostly he was trying to convince me he had no choice other than to do what the Colonel ordered him to do. His sincerity was enough to pacify me, for the time being anyways. Meanwhile, the photographer called to say my proofs were ready. When I walked through the studio door, I gasped. Hanging on the wall behind the counter was an 18 by 24 inch matted and framed photograph of me in tears. I only wanted an 8 by 10. I can't afford this, I said in a panic, thinking there had to be some misunderstanding. This one's for me, June. I took the liberty of having it made up to surprise you. What do you think of it? He said, proudly, admiring his work. It's nice, very nice, I answered, still in shock over the size of it. He wanted to use the photo in an upcoming photography contest and planned to make copies for me free of charge. See, my photograph, though, didn't win him the blue ribbon he'd hoped for, but a red one for second place. In the judge's opinion, my neck needed more exposure in order to balance out the overall picture. Picky, I said. Very picky. I told him when he gave me the disappointing news. I walked the 2 short miles to the post office to mail my photo to Elvis, singing his song in rhythm with each step. In such a happy mood, I phoned Elvis as soon as I got home, but he wasn't there. He was in Las Vegas, and Lovey didn't know when he was coming home. We had a nice chat anyways. I wish you were here with him, June. I've been worried about him lately. He's still keeping company with that pushy little Nick Adams. Elvis is a big boy, Lovey. I'm sure he's okay and will be home soon, June said, trying to soothe her. Well, I'll tell him you call. I'll tell him that you call. Jeez, I'm sorry, folks. I'll tell him to call you as soon as he walks through the door, little Satin. I love you. You take care now, Gladys said. Now, 2 weeks went by. Then another week. Surely he would call me for my birthday, I thought, but he didn't. The first week in December, I pick up a copy of the commercial appeal and learn that Elvis had a Las Vegas showgirl as his house guest in Memphis. Is this supposed to be for publicity purposes, you two-timing? I thought to myself, ha! Well, I phoned Pat to ask if she'd seen the latest news on Elvis. Yes, I have, June. I'm sorry. I wasn't going to say anything. You know my feelings. Anything you don't know can't hurt you. It's probably all for publicity purposes anyways. The girl isn't even pretty, Pat said, supportive of me and standing up for Elvis at the same time. Well, I gotta say, I think she was pretty. I've seen that photo. But that doesn't mean Elvis was serious. Now, I don't know. It's difficult. It had to have been difficult for June. And it would have had to have been difficult for Elvis to try to stay true to somebody. Because when you're young and somebody's... I think Elvis found something to love in everybody. And I say this because I've always kind of been the same way. I mean, I can find things to love in people. And I do think that, when you're in a serious relationship, you can't be around a bunch of other people that are attractive or, And Elvis, unfortunately, he had to. He had to be around all these people for publicity, for his career. Now, if he chose not to have the career, that'd be one thing. But he was choosing to have the career. I didn't find her pretty either. But being a showgirl, she probably has legs running all the way up to her straddle. And you know how he loves legs, I answered, in a pissed-off tone. Yeah, but June, he probably asked her out while she was in her stage makeup. Can you imagine how he felt when he saw her without all that makeup? Ha! Now, Elvis was such a huge star. Everything he did always made the front page, especially in his hometown newspaper. The Memphis commercial appeal had a wide circulation and was available at every newsstand. It was as if Colonel Parker himself was sending me personal reports on Elvis's love life. For Christmas, well, I went out partying with all my friends. Anything was better than staying home, waiting for a call that might not come. Now, a few days after Christmas, I saw a picture of Elvis and another showgirl, a different one, who had spent Christmas with Elvis and his family in his Audubon drive home. Well, at least the second one was prettier than the first, but not by much. I crushed the newspaper and threw it in the nearest trash can. You can't blame this on Colonel Parker, Elvis Presley. You can go straight to Hades. I was home the following day when the phone rang, and it was Elvis. Merry Christmas, baby. I tried to call you on Christmas Day, but I couldn't get through. All the circuits were busy. That's okay, Elvis. I wasn't home anyways, I answered sharply. Did you have a good Christmas, baby? He asked sweetly. Yeah, Elvis, I had a great Christmas. Really great. How about you? You don't sound like yourself, June. Is something wrong? Wrong? No, everything is just fine, Elvis. Just fine. You're mad at me for not calling, aren't you? Heavens no. Why on earth should I be mad with you? You're only doing what you got to do. Besides, Colonel Parker probably has your phone tapped. I wouldn't put it past him, June. The old fart knows every move I make, he said, trying to sound cheerful. The whole world knows every move you make, Elvis, not just the Colonel. I know every time you take when you go to the bathroom. Boy, she is curt with her language. My voice sounded like I'd been on a diet of razor blades. He was very quiet on the other end of the line, and so was I. Are you still there, baby? June, are you still there? Sitting on the edge of my bed, facing the mirror on my dresser, I could see the tears streaming down my face. Real tears. Not like the tears I forced myself to make for the picture. I thought about hanging up the phone, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I wanted him to mention the showgirls and convince me he was forced into the situation. Some excuse, anything. But not one word of regret came from the other end of the line. I had to clear my throat before I could answer. Yes, Elvis, I'm still here. Listen, baby, I gotta run. In case I don't get to call you, have a happy new year. I love you, June. I've gotta run. Happy New Year to you, Elvis Presley, I said, slamming down the phone. Seems like all of this started by her not going to New York and her not staying in Memphis. Now, do I think Elvis had a big romance with these showgirls? He could have been ticked off, hurt, ticked. I mean, that's when you're young, you do stupid stuff. I mean, we got to remember that Elvis was 21, June was 19 or 20. They're both stupid. And I think both of them would laugh if they could hear me say that. It's just the truth. When you're 21, you're stupid. You just are. You make stupid decisions based upon hormones. And that's guys and gals. Both. They were both stupid. Seeing my reflection in the mirror, I thought about the photograph. I forgot to even ask if he'd received it. I'd given a great deal of thought how I would sign the picture and decided to make it simple. To my beloved, always and forever June. But with all the mail bags arriving daily, I wondered if he even received the dang thing. But just then I really didn't care. Another strange thought popped into my head. Was the picture of me crying a premonition or just an ironic coincidence? I had said something to my sales team earlier this morning in a message. Bruce Lee said, don't say anything negative, even in jest, even as a joke. You know, like the world doesn't know the difference or your mind doesn't know the difference, something like that. You know, you can bring negativity upon yourself by speaking negatively. And maybe that's what she did. I don't know. I didn't mind sharing Elvis with his fans. That part was easy. I just couldn't share him with his other loves, or with other loves. I couldn't spend my life waiting in the wings, and I wouldn't. I had to be not just his number one, but his only. My New Year's resolution was to forget I'd ever heard of Elvis Presley, but it wasn't easy. How could you forget a person whose name is a household word? I put on a happy face and struggled to keep it there, and I convinced myself that I wasn't cut out for Elvis's kind of life. Sure, it was exciting, but the excitement never stopped. Elvis would never have a life of his own. He belonged to the public. Shall I continue? Because it says part 2. See, I did a video on this on my channel. Makes me sad, what I'm going to show you. Even though this isn't really that sad, but this is kind of the beginning of the end. Although the beginning of the end was really when she didn't go to New York. There was a telegram sent by Elvis to June, March 18th, 1957. And it says, attempt delivery unsuccessful from Sanderson, Texas. I don't think I caught that before. 307 Fayard Street, Biloxi, Mississippi. Meet me, Union Station, New Orleans, 445. Arriving Sunset Limited, Elvis Presley. This is what it looks like. Y'all can see. Chapter 35, Wrong Direction. The first time Fabian Taranto asked me out on a date, I accepted. I hadn't been out on a real date in such a long time, I'd almost forgotten how to act. We went to an early movie, then out to dinner, and after dinner we went dancing, something Elvis would never be able to do. I was having so much fun, I didn't want the date to end, and neither did Fabian. See, he came into my life at a time when I needed him most. It was a real whirlwind romance, and within a few short weeks we were both in love. I had completely convinced myself that nothing and no one else mattered. We were the only two people in the world. When I received Elvis's telegram dated March 18th, 1957, I was already engaged to be married. I made the trip to New Orleans to see Elvis one last time and to tell him of my engagement. Vengeance is mine, I thought unashamedly. My mind was so jumbled with questions, I couldn't think straight. Where would I begin? Would I be able to choose the right words? How was I going to feel when I looked into his eyes? Maybe I wouldn't tell him anything. No, I couldn't do that. I had to tell him the truth and feel no regrets. We parked near the front entrance of Union Station, and all of a sudden I began feeling queasy, thinking I was going to throw up in the parking lot. I looked at my watch. I didn't have time to be sick. We got inside the huge train station, which was packed with people, and didn't know which way to even turn. Red West and Gene Smith suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Red took me by the hand, and Gene took hold of Pat. We pushed and shoved our way through the train terminal and back into the railroad yard, where rows upon rows of trains were lined up. Stepping over track after track, we finally turned between two trains. About 10 cars down, I saw Elvis leaning out looking for us. My heart skipped a beat when he jumped down from the train and ran to meet us. Think about this. The most famous person in the world asks you to meet him at a train station, and he's about to find out something that he's not expecting. He's trying to choose June over and over again, according to the history and according to this book. And what is June doing? Now, once again, I know it sounds critical of June, but I'm just trying to put into perspective the reality. She was choosing this whole time not to be in Elvis's life. The other person who is on the other side of that, which is Elvis, he could sense that. He could feel that. And maybe he made some stupid decisions. Maybe he didn't call on purpose. Maybe he was busy, and who knows. But let's finish this story. I don't think we're going to be able to finish this whole book unless I lose my voice, but we'll see what happens. Okay? I'm inspired by your guys' desire to know the end of the story on my own. My heart skipped a beat when he jumped down from the train and ran to meet us. My heart wanted to run, but my feet kept walking calmly in his direction. He scooped me up and gave me a quick kiss and put me back down. Grabbing my hand, we ran to a different train, one that had been waiting for his late arrival. He climbed aboard and pulled me up the high steps right into his arms. He carried me to his private car and began kissing me all over my face. Oh, June, I've missed you so much, baby. I'm so glad you're here. I was afraid you wouldn't come. Let me look at you, he said, holding me at arm's length and then turning me around. You look wonderful, June. I'm not letting you out of my sight. You're coming home with me, baby. Wait till you see the surprise that I have for you, June. You're gonna, when you see what I bought for you, baby, you're really gonna, it's S-H-I-T. They like to talk to each other that way, I guess. I had never seen him this excited before, or this handsome either. I fought my feelings, remembering Fabian and the reason for making this trip. I can't go home with you, Elvis. I don't have any clothes, I blurted out, avoiding the truth. You don't need anything, baby. We'll buy you a whole new wardrobe when we get home. But I didn't make plans to go home with you, Elvis. You don't need plans. The only plans you need are to spend your life with me. We'll call your mother when we get to Memphis. I already told Mama you were coming home with me, baby. She can't wait to see you. Well, we have Pat's daddy's car. She can't drive back to Biloxi by herself, I said, still avoiding the issue. That's no problem, June. One of the boys will drive her home. Wait till you see the surprise I have for you, baby. You're going to love it. He was holding me in his arms in the middle of his private car and kissing me after every word. I kept thinking about Fabian. I couldn't go home with Elvis. Elvis didn't need me. He had many, many girls to turn to. I was in love with Fabian, and I knew Fabian was in love with me. Fabian needed me. I wouldn't break his heart. I had trusted him with my heart as well. Something else I may never be able to do with Elvis. I had to quit stalling. I had to tell him the truth. Finally, I just blurted out the words. I can't go with you, Elvis. I'm engaged to be married. What did you say? I said I'm engaged to be married. His face was expressionless, and he released me and slumped down on the couch. He put his head in his hands for a few seconds, then raised his head up to look at me. You're kidding me, June, right? You can't be serious. You're trying to get on with me, right? Maybe get even with me. No, Elvis, I'm not kidding. I looked into his eyes, trying desperately not to cry. He put his hands to his head again, and the conductor was yelling, "All aboard!" And the train gave a slight jerk. Elvis looked at me with a blank stare. I leaned down and kissed his forehead. "I love you, Elvis Presley. I always will. Take care of yourself." I ran from the car, grabbing Pat by the hand and jumping from the train. I know that, like I said, we all know it didn't work out. What are y'all thinking right now? And I'm sure there's going to be a mixture of comments. Some folks sticking up for June. Some folks sticking up for Elvis. But gosh, think about all the times June could have just reached out to Gladys and let her know. I mean, this does feel like a revenge. Like she said here, vengeance is mine, I thought unashamedly. Now, maybe she didn't expect Elvis to show up at the train station, wanting her to come to Memphis and talking about a huge present that he'd gotten for her. Wonder what that present was. Probably a new car, I'm assuming. Maybe all of you Elvis sleuths can find out what Elvis bought prior to March 18th, 1957. Maybe he bought a new car, and we could find out what that car would have been. But it's either that, or I could have been a ring, too. But gosh. Well, let's continue on, shall we? My eyes were so filled with tears I could barely see. Pat and I walked slowly towards the terminal between the trains. As I turned to look back at the moving train, I saw Elvis leaning out the door, waving. I returned his wave and blew him a kiss. I stood, unable to move, watching the train as Elvis became smaller and smaller in the distance, and then he was gone. The 2-hour ride back to Biloxi was silent. Even the car radio was turned off. I was despondent enough without taking the chance of hearing "I Want You, I Need You, I Love You" or "Love Me Tender." In fact, any song by Elvis, even Milk Cow Boogie, would have made me suicidal. The very next day, a news story came out in the paper. The headlines announced, "Elvis buys Graceland." Was this to have been my big surprise? Very possible. Big enough for her to move into. Now, I don't remember this time frame with All You Lonesome Tonight. I'm going to have to cross-reference this. And you would think I'd remember it, but I do have a busy life. My head is full of sales numbers and stuff with my sales team, but was that to be the surprise? Was Elvis going to ask her to stay? And why wouldn't she have, right? If they're supposedly dating. If Elvis says that "I love you," and June says "I love you" back, those words have power. Oh, that was a Bruce Lee quote. Never speak negatively, even joking. Words have power. Chapter 36. We're doing it, folks. We are going all in here. Okay, I'm reading to the end. Okay, out of control. I don't want y'all to think that you're not important to me. You are. Okay, very much so. Every one of you that are watching this video right now that have been maybe a little upset at me for not reading enough. Out of control. I felt a bit guilty not telling Fabian about my trip to New Orleans to see Elvis one last time. But I thought the less said the better. Trying desperately to get him out of my system, I found that talking about him only stirred up painful memories. Painful because it was a time in my life filled with light, a wonderful, carefree time of first love, and painful because I had let it go. The mere mention of Elvis's name made my heart ache. I knew Elvis wouldn't have just broken my heart, he would have shredded it to pieces. I justified my actions by believing that I was saving myself from the pain and heartache I had helped my mother live through. I began spending every available moment with Fabian, and it seemed as though every time Pat called, I was busy doing something or had plans to be with my new love. Now, one night when she called, I noticed a definite tone of resentment in her voice. So you're home? Are you going to be there for a while? I'd like to come over and show you the new me, if that's okay. Sure, come on over. I haven't seen you in a while. Fabian's on his way over too. I'll put out a pot of coffee. Now, I don't know what it was about friends coming over for a visit, but Mama always put on a pot of coffee. I guess I was following in her footsteps. Fabian and I were sitting in the living room when Pat finally arrived. She looked better than she had ever looked in her life. Her hair had been bleached a soft ash blonde, and my beautician, Alma, had given her a complete makeover. After complimenting her on her new look, I offered her a cup of coffee. No thanks, I'll have a glass of wine if you have any. I was Alma's last customer, and we shared a bottle of wine to celebrate the new me. I hate to change drinks midstream, she added, with a little sarcastic laugh. I was hoping she wouldn't mention Elvis's name, but it was the next thing out of her mouth. Did you tell Fabian about your little trip to New Orleans to see Elvis, she snapped? No, Pat, I didn't tell him. Would you like to tell him, I snapped in return? Maybe we have our answer why Pat and June stopped being friends. Well, I think you should be the one to do it. That is, if you're serious about this marriage shit. Fabian, holding his mug of coffee in both hands, was glancing back and forth, waiting for one of us to say something. Pat was glaring at me, ignoring Fabian's presence altogether. I was shocked by her behavior. Pat, you've had too much to drink. I think you'd better come back some other time. I haven't had too much to drink. I've only had a few glasses of wine. At least I can think straight, which is more than I can say for you. You don't have time for Fabian, you don't have time for Elvis, and now you don't have time for me, she yelled, standing up and placing her hands on her hips, daring me to say something. My choice of words was like a slap in the face. What's the matter with you, girl? Are you queer for me? Boy, June had a mouth on her. And basically she's saying, what's the matter with you? You guys know what I'm talking about. Are you, do you want me that way? In a flash, she ran towards me, hitting me in the face and knocking me to the floor. I got up, put my arms around her, and tried to pin her arms to her side. See, I was much taller, heavier, and stronger than Pat, and I didn't want to hurt her. Fabian took her from me and led her to the door, telling her to go home and sober up. He locked the screen and closed the door, but within seconds, she was banging on the door and shouting obscenities at the top of her voice. We tried to ignore her, thinking she would go away, but she didn't. Meanwhile, my nosy next-door neighbor phoned me to tell me that I'd better put a stop to all the commotion because she'd already called the police. Well, Fabian was outside calming Pat down when the patrol car rounded the corner. Sorry, boy, my lips are dry. Holding Pat by the arm, he told them everything was under control. As soon as the police drove away, Pat told Fabian she wasn't leaving until she had talked to me. She sounded much calmer now, so Fabian brought her back into the house, but she started screaming and tried to attack me again. Fabian took us both down the street, away from all the houses and out of earshot. Now, if you want to settle this argument like an adult, you'd better do it now. I'm tired of listening to this kind of behavior, and I know June's had enough of it too, he said, speaking directly to Pat, in a soft-spoken, easygoing way. Well, Pat just stood there, silent, glaring at me with both fists clenched. Listen, Pat, I don't want to hurt you. I want you to leave me alone. Go home, we'll talk this out tomorrow when you're not so angry. Is that okay with you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, hoping that we would come to an agreement. That's fine with me, June, just fine, she said through clenched teeth. Fabian and I turned around and started walking back to my house. I had only taken a few steps when I'd only taken a few steps when Pat jumped on my back like some kind of wild animal, knocking me to the street, cutting both my hands and knees on the loose gravel. I somehow got her pinned to the ground and pleaded with her to stop. Please, please don't make me hurt you, Pat, please. She stopped struggling and went limp. I loosened my grip, got to my feet, and started walking home again. I couldn't believe all of this was taking place between me and my best friend, but unbelievably, she got up and did the same thing again. My hands and knees were dripping with blood. Losing all control, I got up from the street and tore into her. The sound of my fist smashing her face made me feel sick. I stepped back, waiting for her to get up, afraid of turning my back. She charged at me again, bringing out a rage in me I'd never experienced before. She kept getting up, and I kept knocking her down. I have to say that I witnessed a few fights between girls, and it's not fun to see. It's not pretty. No, neither is with guys, but guys is usually pretty quick. It's usually a punch or something, and they're down. Girls will just go at it forever. Ripping hair, all that stuff. Never liked seeing that. It finally ended with Pat on her knees, her face in her hands. I had beaten her bloody. Fabian tried to help her to her car, but she pushed him away and spat in his face. We'll talk about this. I got some thoughts here. I cried every step of the way home. How could something like this have happened? I know she thought the world of me, and me of her. I had asked her to be my maid of honor. A few days later, Fabian and I were having a sandwich at our favorite little cafe when Pat came in. She walked past her table to the ladies' room, stayed a few minutes, then walked by again, leaving the cafe. I don't know where she found the nerve to even appear in public. I pushed my half-eaten sandwich away. If she wanted me to feel guilty for what I'd done to her face, she succeeded. Both eyes were black and almost swollen shut. Her lower lip was swollen and purple, with what happened to be black stitches hanging out. Knowing I was responsible made it all the more horrible. Pat told several of our mutual friends that she'd driven her car up under the back of a truck and was lucky to be alive. I never told them anything different. I wanted to forget what had happened. We are going to read to the end. I'm just kind of curious. I don't think there's a picture of Pat in this book, but there may be. But what are the reasons for Pat doing this? Let's think about this clearly. Would it be that she was upset, thinking that she was going to have a famous life, being the best friend of Elvis's wife? Possible. Could be. That's one way of thinking about it. No picture of Pat there. And I'm looking for this because I don't know. I mean, I got another phone there. I probably could find it on my other phone. I don't know if there's a picture of Pat in here. And I guess there probably wouldn't be because I don't think they ever became friends again after this. I'm guessing. That's a pretty rough ending to a friendship. I mean, is it because Pat was in love with Elvis? Is it, what exactly caused it? Was it that Pat was in love with June? The accusation. And June had been cutting everybody out that was associated with her past to Elvis. Could be. That could make somebody upset and hurt. I don't know, but, I don't know if y'all expected this at all. But we're going to keep going. Chapter 37, just for you. As Catholics, Fabian and I wanted to be married in the church and made the necessary appointments to talk to a priest. Our first appointment was on April Fool's Day to get the priest to nullify Fabian's first marriage, a civil marriage not recognized by the church. The priest turned out to be a real hard nut to crack, insisting Fabian patch things up with his ex-wife, practically ignoring my presence at every visit. If Fabian's civil marriage wasn't recognized by the church, what was this hullabaloo all about? I was puzzled. Father, forgive me if I sound disrespectful, but Phoebe and I will be married on the 1st of June regardless of who performs the ceremony, you or a justice of peace. I announced during our final visit, fed up with his double standards and procrastination. Now, I thought this would make him realize that we were serious about our June date, but the last week of May arrived and the priest still hadn't given us his consent to be married in the church. Well, we were married as planned. However, on the first day of June, 1957, the quiet civil ceremony was held at the home of Fabian's aunt and uncle, with a few family and close friends in attendance. Exactly 24 days after the wedding, Elvis phoned my house and talked to my mama. Mama called me after she was sure Fabian had left for work. June, Elvis called her last night. Elvis Presley? I asked with astonishment. That reaction was because I don't think June said Elvis Presley. I just don't. I think she probably said Elvis called. I don't know that. Maybe not. What other Elvis do you know, June? She replied, laughing at my dumb response. What did he say, Mama? He wanted you to meet him in New Orleans at Union Station tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Well, I told him I would give you the message. He asked how you were doing, and I told him you were fine, that married life was agreeing with you. He hesitated at first, and then he said, oh, she did get married? I told him you got married 3 weeks ago, and all he said was, oh, I see. Well, it was nice talking to you, Miss Winico. I hope June will be happy. Then he hung up the phone. He acted surprised, June. I thought you told him you were getting married. I did, Mama. I guess he didn't believe me. I wanted to call Pat, but we were no longer on speaking terms. I had to talk to someone, though, so I called anyways. Pat answered the phone, and I politely gave her all the information. Are you going to meet him? She asked, also being polite. No way. Are you kidding me? I couldn't go traipsing all around the country to see Elvis. I'm a married lady now. Well, I'm going. Thanks for calling, June. Pat, Gil Higgins, and a few other friends from New Orleans went to Union Station to meet Elvis, but he wasn't there. Red West informed the disappointed group that Elvis had gotten off the train in Lafayette, Louisiana, rented a car, and drove to Memphis alone. Red didn't give any information as to why Elvis had left the train, and thinking it was none of my business, I didn't ask, Pat told me. It's my opinion for what it's worth that he was afraid you'd be there, or even more afraid you wouldn't be there. You can draw your own conclusions. However, it was a very unusual thing for him to do. I suppose he had his reasons. Well, a few weeks later, Pat stopped by my apartment for a visit. She was not overly friendly. She was holding a record in her hand with a picture of Elvis on the cover. Are you ready for this? She asked, handing me the record. The record, just for you, was an extended play album with 4 songs on it, including Is It So Strange? It had been recorded in January 1957, but wasn't released until after I was married. Pat took the record from my hand and put it on the hi-fi. Listening to the song, I was fighting back tears, not wanting Pat to see me cry, but I couldn't help myself. I cried anyways. I'm not going to say I told you so, June. Your big problem was not believing Elvis really loved you. You were too dang busy being afraid he'd break your heart. Well, what about his heart, June? Did you ever think of that? She asked, appearing to get great pleasure out of my misery. Did you just come here to see me cry, Pat? No, June. I knew you would cry, and I knew I'd see you crying, but that's not the reason I came. I thought you'd like to have the record, that's all. Your record. It was recorded just for you. Consider it a gift from a friend, she said on her way out the door. While struggling to pull myself together before Fabian came home, I washed my face, blew my nose, and put ice on my swollen eyes. I threw myself into making my marriage the perfect one. I had to. It was the only way for me to survive. On August 14th, 1958, I learned about the death of Gladys Love Presley. I was in the hospital about to give birth to my first child, Tony. What a weird... Once again, some of y'all do not believe in Are You Lonesome Tonight, but who else was in the hospital that week? or the week before. One of the two things. Week of, week before, week after. Lucy de Barbin, about to give birth to the daughter she named Desiree Presley. 6 weeks later, Pat showed up at my front door carrying a tiny package wrapped in blue ribbon. It had been almost 1.5 years since I had seen or heard from her. When I opened the door, a big lump came into my throat and my eyes filled with tears. See, I was holding my precious baby in my arms. Pat looked at me and then at the baby and started crying too. I put my arm around her and we hugged and cried together. We both laughed when the baby started making little grunting noises between us. I invited her in, handed her the baby, and poured us both a glass of wine. What? No coffee? She laughed. Nope, caffeine is not good for the baby. The doctor recommends a beer or a glass of wine daily. How about that? We talked first about the tragic death of Elvis's mother and hoped he was doing okay. I would have gone to the funeral, but Tony was born on the 15th of August and I was recuperating. Thinking of Elvis and the news of Lovey's death actually helped me to bear the pain of childbirth. I did love her, you know, I said, taking my sleeping baby from Pat and placing him in the crib. I know you did, June. She loved you too. I poured us another glass of wine and we talked for hours. Pat brought me up to date on her last visit with Elvis, shortly after the move to Graceland. On a whim, she and Buddy Conrad decided to make a surprise visit to Memphis. Buddy had read that Elvis was taking a much-needed rest between movies and was spending time at the home with his parents before going in the Army. Well, Buddy picked up Pat from Perkinson Junior College, where she was just beginning her freshman year. They drove to Memphis, arriving at 2 a.m, and checked in a motel down the street from Graceland. Buddy had no problem getting Elvis on the phone that same day. The guard at the gate motioned for the mint green Continental to drive on through. Pat said Buddy's smile was as big as the grill on his car when they drove up the front of the mansion. June, I wish you could have seen the smile on Elvis's face when he greeted us at the door. He hugged us both for a long time and said, "Gee, it's so good to see you guys. It reminds me of the good old days." And as she was describing Elvis's smiling face, I could feel myself smiling too. For me, they were also good old days too. Did he mention me, Pat? I asked, not wanting to ask, but unable to resist. As a matter of fact, he did, June. He wanted to know if you had gotten married just to spite him. She replied, "No doubt," feeling herself that was exactly the reason. What did you tell him, Pat? Did you tell him he hit the nail on the head? I asked her. No, smart butt. I couldn't think of anything to say. I was so shocked by his question. I babbled something like, she, and he said, "Never mind. I don't want to talk about it," and changed the subject. I do know he was upset. He pressed his lips together and shook his head. He still cares, June. I know he still cares. Pat said, shaking her head too. I don't want to talk about it either, Pat. It gets me upset too, I said, taking a deep breath and sipping my wine. Pat changed the subject and began telling me about life in her college dorm. Later on, she did tell me about visiting with Mrs. Presley while she was in the kitchen doing her thing. Oh. Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah, Pat brought me up to date on her last visit with Elvis shortly after he moved to Graceland. So basically, she went up there with Conrad before June's baby was born, before Gladys died. I thought the story was mixed up. Okay, so Pat changed the subject and began telling me about her life in college dorm. Later on, she did tell me about visiting with Mrs. Presley while she was in the kitchen doing her thing. She asked how you were doing, June, and by the tone of her voice, I think she was angry with you for breaking her little boy's heart. The baby started crying, and it was time for his afternoon feeding. I changed his diaper, put it in my swollen bosom, and we joined Pat in the living room. Gee, aren't you the perfect mother? I didn't know mothers did that sort of thing anymore. I thought they all used bottles. Well, I hope he doesn't get drunk from the wine, she laughed, surprised to see me breastfeeding. Well, we have a whittle glass of wine every night, don't we, Whittle Bitty? I said, watching my son tug hungrily. Don't tell me you're going to baby talk to him too, Pat said, with a grin on her face. Certainly. How else do you talk to a baby? Well, as soon as the baby finished feeding, Pat handed me the tiny package that had been sitting on my coffee table. I opened the package to find a tiny gold band. Tiny, but still too large for even his thumb. The way time was flying, I knew it wouldn't be long before we grew into it. The fight was never mentioned. We both know some things are better left unsaid. We kept in touch with occasional phone calls, and she always mailed postcards from all the exotic places that her flight attendant job took her to. I knew after that day that our friendship would last a lifetime. So I guess they stayed friends. I think I heard about the fight, not really the details, and assumed that they hadn't stayed friends, but I guess they did, which is good. Chapter 38, The Mother of Two. Pat arrived on my doorstep for another surprise visit in early 1963. I was now the proud mother of two. My beautiful baby girl Tori, with her big eyes the color of split pea soup, was born in May of 1962. This time Pat was carrying a package slightly larger than the last one, wrapped in pink ribbon. She gave me a quick hug, commented on my long hair, giving it a tug, and raced past me to the center of the floor, where Tori was playing with her toys. Pat sat on the floor next to my little girl and handed her the neatly wrapped package. Well, Tori managed to get the package open with Pat's help, but her tiny hands were not yet strong enough to hold the sterling silver piggy bank, already filled with silver dimes. My son Tony, now 4.5, woke from an afternoon nap and came in the living room to investigate the strange noise. Is this the baby I held in my arms not too long ago? God, Junie's absolutely gorgeous, Pat said, unable to believe her eyes. Tony, say hello to Pat. This is the lady who gave you the gold ring that you're wearing in your baby picture. Tony flashed a shy smile in Pat's direction, and his little face turned red. The picture I had mentioned was taken when Tony was 6 months old and wearing nothing but the gold ring. Even though he was lying on his stomach, the picture was still an embarrassment to him, and at his insistence, I had to remove it from the living room and hang it on my bedroom wall. Now, when I asked Pat if she'd like to see the picture, Tony ran to block the entrance to my room. Maybe some other time, Pat said, seeing the "oh, no you don't" look in Tony's big blue eyes. Much to Pat's disappointment, I didn't have any wine in the house, so I put on the traditional pot of coffee, and we talked and talked. She had recently made another trip to Graceland and couldn't wait to give me the details. On one of her flights to Memphis, Pat had an overnight layover, and as soon as she got checked into her hotel, she phoned Barbara Rife. Pat and I had met Barbara in '56 while visiting Elvis in Memphis. Spending most of her time visiting fans at the front gate, Pat and Barbara became friends and exchanged addresses, keeping in touch over the years. Barbara, a regular visitor to Audubon Drive, became close friends with Elvis and had an open invitation to visit Graceland anytime he was there. Now happily married, Barbara was thrilled to hear from Pat. It just so happened Elvis was in town and that Barbara and her husband were planning to attend a small gathering that night at Graceland. Barbara, following all the rules, phoned Graceland to get permission to bring another guest. She got the message through, and Junior Smith was there, waiting for them at their front door, excited about seeing Pat again. Now, Junior was a real pain in the butt because of his drinking and used to follow Pat around like a lost puppy. Pat was surprised to find him sober for a change. Junior found a place for the two of them to sit, and while Barbara and her husband mingled with some other regulars. "How have you been, and how's old Juno and Nico?" Junior asked, wanting to know everything that was going on in Biloxi. "Everyone's doing great," Pat answered, bringing Junior up to date with everything going on in her life, and mine too. "Good old June. She really cooked his goose. Ain't nobody ever said no to the king before," Junior said, laughing his evil laugh. Hee, like he was glad. "Well, Junior, I'm sorry it happened the way it did. I thought they were perfect together," Pat said, remembering there was always a slight resentment between Elvis and Junior. "Now, don't get me wrong, Pat. I'm sorry it happened, too. I really liked old June, mainly because she was the kind that wouldn't take no... He's still looking for another one like her, but it ain't going to happen." The mansion was filled with young girls, all dressed in their sexiest clothes. They were moving around the room, apparently jockeying for position. After reading about his teenage house guest from Germany, supposedly now living in the mansion, she had scanned the room looking for the little girl named Priscilla. "Which one is Priscilla, Junior?" she asked. "Oh, she ain't here. She's over at Vernon's house with the rest of the kids," Junior said, laughing his villainous hee laugh again. The kids Junior was referring to were the 3 children of Dee Stanley, Vernon's wife of almost 3 years. Junior said Elvis wasn't happy with the marriage and he didn't like the kids. But he did like the kids. Let me make sure. Junior said Elvis wasn't happy with the marriage, but he did like the kids. Pat was happy to see Elvis finally making his entrance from the top of the stair. She was tired of Junior's sarcasm. Drunk or sober, he was still a pain in the butt. Elvis paused at the foot of the stairs long enough to do a few karate moves with some of the regular guys before scanning the room, looking for Pat. "Here she is, cuz," Junior said, standing to give Elvis his seat. Elvis came over, pulled Pat from the chair, and gave her a big hug. Pat said the room was buzzing, with all the girls looking in her direction, wondering who was this new girl, casually dressed in Bermuda shorts and monopolizing Elvis. Pat hadn't been prepared for the layover, and she was just wearing the only clean clothes that she had. "How's June? I hear she has 2 kids now," Elvis said, taking a seat next to Pat. "Well, how did you know June had 2 kids? I just found out myself recently," Pat replied, surprised. "I got connections, Pat. Believe me, I got connections." The 2 of them talked for a while, mostly small talk, until Elvis excused himself, saying he had some people to talk to and would talk to her later. "Junior, show Pat around the place while I'm gone." "Upstairs too, cuz?" Junior asked. "Yeah, why not? Show her everything," Elvis answered. Pat felt honored. Very few people were ever allowed beyond the immediate area. The mansion had been completely redecorated since Pat's last visit, strictly to suit Elvis's far-out taste. Pat skipped the description of most of the rooms and began telling me about Elvis's bedroom. "Well, he has this bigger than king-size bed sitting on the night table. Next to the bed was a gold telephone." Knowing Elvis, it was probably the real thing too. But that's not the best part, June. "I went to get a closer look at the telephone, and sitting on the table next to the phone was a copy of The Prophet." "What do you think about that?" Well, I took a deep breath. It seemed that something or someone was always stirring up old memories, bringing back the pain. "It couldn't have been the copy I gave him, Pat. That was a long time ago. It probably got lost." "That's not the point, June. It doesn't matter if it's your copy or a copy he bought for himself. It's still a copy of The Prophet. The fact he still has the book says something, don't you think?" I didn't answer. I would not get into a heartbreaking debate about Elvis still loving me or not loving me. 6 long years had passed and I was doing fine. It didn't matter anymore. "Well, June, don't you think?" she asked again, insisting on an answer. "The only thing I think, Pat, is that Elvis likes the book. Nothing more, nothing less. Would you like another cup of coffee?" Well, Pat followed me to the kitchen, and before I could reach for the coffee pot, she took the cups from my hand, put them on the counter, and gave me a hug. "I'm sorry, June. I didn't mean to stir up old memories. I won't say anything else, okay? I do have a few more things to tell you. Funny things. Nothing that would make you sad, I promise." As we were putting together sugar and cream in our coffee, her mouth went into high gear again. "Elvis now likes his coffee black and drinks it by the gallon. I've never seen anything like it. His cup never gets empty." Let me see, where was I? "Oh, Barbara and her husband had to leave, so I went to find Elvis and say goodbye. When I found him, he insisted I stay, saying he would bring me back to my hotel later. Naturally, I agreed and went to say goodbye to Barbara. Elvis introduced me to Bonnie, his date for the evening, and pulled out a chair for me in the kitchen table. You know how Elvis was always a kitchen person. Well, everyone was sitting around the table drinking coffee. Frankly, I would have enjoyed a glass of wine, but I didn't ask. I didn't dare ask. I do know one thing, June. Elvis was hyped up on something, either drugs or caffeine or a combination of the two. His legs were bouncing under the table so fast you could feel the vibrations through the floor. It was making me so nervous I had to keep my hands off the table. Well, between that and the 4 or 5 cups of coffee I knew sleeping was out of the question. So we left the mansion around 4 a.m. Elvis, Bonnie, Junior, me, and Joe Esposito. A real nice guy. I feel like that's the way she probably talks. Probably like machine gun fast. To my surprise, we dropped Bonnie off first. Elvis then picked up his car phone and called Anita Wood. You were right about one thing, June. Elvis would never be faithful to one person. He had Bonnie on his arm, Anita on the phone, and poor little Priscilla waiting patiently in the wings. Oh well, I guess it was appropriate. His last movie was called Girls, Girls, Girls. Other than the silver screen, Pat never got to see Elvis again. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but later that same year, I would make a trip to Memphis myself and visit my former love. I didn't know that. Looks like we all get some surprises here. Gosh, I didn't bring anything to drink. I didn't bring a cup of coffee. I didn't bring water, nothing. And I need to check real quick. Make sure I don't have any pressing messages here, since I only planned to read about 25, 30 minutes, and here I am, an hour and 41 into it. Girls in bikini, walking and wiggling by. Let's see here. All right, I know. Okay, here we go. I don't think this is the last chapter. We got pretty much 2 more chapters. Chapter 39, A New Love, Memphis, 1963. The city of Memphis was to host the WIBC, Women's and International Bowling Congress. I can't talk. That's what happens when you talk for an hour and 45 minutes. National Bowling Tournament. My team and I had only been bowling for 3 years, but we were all pretty fair bowlers and excited about going to our first national tournament. Naturally, Graceland was included in our itinerary, even though the chances of seeing Elvis were slim. As soon as our plans were finalized, I spent every available afternoon sunbathing just in case I saw Elvis again. Does this sound like a girl that's over Elvis, that's happy with her marriage? She married this guy out of spite. Now, once again, she also might have married this guy out of love and survival. I'm sure she did. I'm not speaking for June. It's my own personal opinion. But, interesting. Interesting she would do that, right? I hadn't had a suntan in years, and I wanted to look the same as I did the first time we met. Our team sponsor was the CF Gullet Seafood Company. Our shirts were white with a big oyster on the half shell embroidered on the back. Now, I gave the shirts a personal touch by sewing a pearl button in each oyster. I made the gray collates to match the colors on the oyster for all 5 team members. Back then, even the WIBC frowned upon women in slacks. We arrived early in the evening and had no plans for our first night in town, so the girls decided this would be a good time to visit Graceland. By this time, Elvis was a legend, one of the most famous people in the world. We pulled up to the front of Graceland gate, and I stepped from the car, introducing myself to the guard. Now, I didn't recognize him and was surprised to find out he knew who I was. Oh, okay. If Elvis was in town, I know he wouldn't mind if we drove up to take a look, I said, honey dripping from my lips. Elvis is in town. He's just not home at the moment. You don't have to bat those blue eyes at me, June. You and your friends can drive up to the house, but only if you promise not to stay long. I'd hate to have Elvis come home early and find a carload of women in his front yard, he laughed. What if that was Uncle Vester? My heart was pounding so fast I couldn't find the door handle to get back in the car. I had no idea Elvis was in Memphis. The last I'd heard, he was in Hollywood making movie after movie. The guard gave us the name of the theater where Elvis and his friends had gone and opened the gate for us. Now, looking up at the mansion, I was filled with mixed emotions. I was happy for Elvis, but at the same time, I was heartbroken. Not for myself, but for his mother. The mansion was much like the antebellum homes she had admired on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. I could still picture her oohing and awing, trying to get Vernon to share in her enthusiasm. Our plan was to drive to the theater after leaving the mansion. I had carefully blotted the tears from my eyes and pulled down the sun visor to check my makeup just in case. I was a bundle of nerves thinking if I did get to see Elvis, how would he react to me? It had been 6 long years. Well, the glass doors to the theater were all tightly locked. I noticed a man walking in the lobby, so I knocked on the door. Seeing a group of fans gathering was not unusual, but he did walk over to check us out. Much to my surprise, the man stared at me for a moment, then opened the door. "You're June, aren't you?" he said, smiling. "Yes, I am. How did you know?" "I've seen pictures of you at the mansion. You haven't changed a bit. Does Elvis know you're here?" "No, we just arrived today," I answered, feeling a nervous wreck. "Well, I know he'll be glad to see you, June. I'll go tell him you're here," he said, turning to leave. "No, don't do that. I'd rather surprise him if that's okay." The girls waited in the lobby while the nice man showed me where Elvis was seated. The theater was divided into 3 large sections with 30 or 40 of Elvis's invited guests, including the side sections. Only 2 people were seated in the center section, Elvis and his date. I walked 1 row behind Elvis's seat and gently tapped him on the shoulder. He turned around and gave me a quick glance as if to say, "What's with this girl annoying me?" and then did a fast double take, stood up and turned around and kneeled on his seat. June, what in the world are you doing here?" he asked, pulling me close to him and hugging me tight. "God, June, you look great. What are you doing here?" he asked again, holding me at arm's length and smiling. Well, I explained that I was with a group of girls, bowling in the national tournament, and had arrived that afternoon. "Oh," he exclaimed, like he was slightly disappointed that he wasn't the main reason for my trip to Memphis. I'm just going to pause a second. You know how everybody talks about Elvis wouldn't be able to get it on with a married woman? And of course, we know about June's story. We know that he did. He was intimate with people that had children. I mean, Susan Henning being one, which I guess you can't really see that book here. I guess I don't have the camera turned, but do we think Elvis would have still been with June, having 2 kids, saying maybe she was divorced, you know? Let's see here. Sorry. Got sidetracked with a little bit of work here. Okay, so I know you're like, "Come on, Joe, just read the story." I explained I was with a group of girls bowling in the national tournament and had arrived that afternoon. "Oh," he exclaimed, like he was slightly disappointed that I wasn't the main reason for my trip to Memphis. We were hugging again when Joe Esposito ran from the front of the theater to see who was bothering Elvis. "Joe, this is June, Wally Taranto's sister-in-law," Elvis said to Joe. It was such a strange introduction coming from Elvis. I had to laugh. Wally, my husband's brother, had told me he was close friends with Elvis, but I thought he was bullying me as usual. I wonder if Elvis made friends with June's husband, brother Wally. I have to do some research on it. This is all kind of strange and odd. "It's nice to meet you, Joe. Any friend of Wally's is certainly a friend of mine," I said, shaking Joe's hand. So this is June Taranto. I've heard a lot about you, June. Nice meeting you at last," Joe Esposito said with a grin, making me wonder what my crazy brother-in-law had said about me. I have to go back and... Is Joe... friends? No, Joe, this is June, Wally Taranto's sister-in-law, Elvis said to Joe. Wally, my husband's brother, had told me he was close friends. Okay, with Elvis. So it was. Okay. All right. I hate to ask what, if you've heard it from Wally. Not just Wally, June. Elvis has told me lots about you, too. Pardon me for interrupting. I thought someone had Elvis in a headlock. I'll leave you 2 alone. I know you have lots of catching up to do, and it was very nice meeting you, said Joe Esposito. Elvis's date was sitting quietly by his side, her eyes never leaving the movie screen. She had to be aggravated by the intrusion. I know I would have been. I thought of apologizing for the interruption, but Elvis started talking again. How are you, June? Are you happy? How many kids do you have now? He asked all in one breath. Misunderstanding his question, thinking he meant how many were with me in Memphis, I replied, 6. 6? Jesus, June, you don't waste any time, do you? The last I heard, you only had 2. Oh, you're right, I do have 2 children, a boy and a girl. Someone told me you named your little boy Elvis, he said, looking just a little proud. You, of all people, should know better than that. My poor husband takes enough ribbing about you as it is. I didn't think it was true. It would have been a nice compliment, though. Now, at the time, I thought it was probably some of Wally's bull, but I didn't ask. It may have been a compliment, Elvis, but it also would have been grounds for divorce, I laughed. Are you doing okay, June? Is there anything else I can do for you, baby? You look great. Really great. You must be happy. I am, Elvis. I couldn't be happier, I said, picking up on him calling me baby, even though it was probably a slip of the tongue. I'm glad, June. I'm really happy for you. God, it's been a long time. Let's see. It's been 6 years already. Can you believe it? Funny how time slips away. Now, he hadn't changed a bit. He was still using song titles in his conversation. He invited me and my friends to come to his house the following night, any time after 10 o'clock. I apologized for interrupting his movie, gave him a quick kiss on the mouth, and said goodbye. You don't kiss people on the mouth when you're married, June. Normally. He stood up between the seats, folded his arms across the chest as I figured he would be, and watched me walk away. Still a leg and butt man. He was always crazy about my butt. He blew me a kiss and gave me an okay sign with his left hand, or an okay sign, letting me know he was still there and looking good. And then came the final icing on the cake. As I stepped from between the row of seats and turned into the theater aisle, I heard him mooing. Mooing. It was like seeing something you really like, kind of moo. He did 2 kinds of moos. The other moo was a shorter, deeper, more monotone kind, which means, man, what a cow. Hearing his moo, I turned and blew him a kiss goodbye. She is flirting the heck with Elvis here. 6 years being married with 2 kids. Now, whatever. I guess who could blame her, right? The original moo had come from a scene in Rebel Without a Cause when James Dean's high school class had gathered in the planetarium. Elvis had picked it up after seeing the movie a dozen or more times. When Elvis and Nick were together, the 2 of them used it often as a private joke. Well, my bowling team was disappointed when I returned to the lobby alone, but they cheered up when I told them that we'd been invited to Graceland the very next night. Needless to say, I got very little sleep that night, trying to recuperate our short but meaningful conversation. Trying to recapture. By the luck of the draw, our team shared a pair of lanes with an all-black team from Detroit, Michigan. When the Detroit team learned we were from Biloxi, Mississippi, a few eyebrows were raised. The South was getting all the blame for all the recent racial turmoil, so the raised eyebrows came as no surprise. It made us all the more determined to show the Northern team what true Southern hospitality was about. Contrary to popular belief, all Southerners are not inbred redneck bigots. True, we did have more than our fair share, but they were fast becoming a thing of the past. The girls from Detroit confessed to being somewhat leery about the long drive that far south, and had considered flying or taking a Greyhound bus. Thank God you didn't take the bus. Y'all would have been mighty tired riding all the way in the back seat. Everyone laughed, breaking the ice. They cheered as much for our team as they did their own, and we did the same, which resulted in higher scores. Both of our teams finished in the top 20, which in a national tournament is not too shabby. After the tournament, we went back to the motel to freshen up for our trip to Graceland. Again, my stomach was in knots. But when we arrived at Graceland, the guard told us Elvis was having personal problems, would not be able to see us, and sent his regrets. My bowling companions were disappointed, but not nearly as disappointed as me. I'd spent twice as much time as usual in the front of the mirror, making sure everything was perfect. Was he really having personal problems, or was he avoiding me? Either way, his current love affair with Anne Margaret was in every newspaper and magazine. Maybe his live-in girlfriend from Germany had had enough of other girlfriends, old and new, and had finally put her foot down. I was hoping I was right, if only because his mother was now gone, and I felt Elvis needed someone to stand up to him. I guess I'll never know. I was obviously Priscilla with him at the theater. She had to be livid. Let me know what y'all think about that. We are finishing here. Hurricane, Biloxi, Mississippi, and Las Vegas, Nevada, 69. The national headlines read, Hurricane Camille, the most violent and destructive storm ever recorded on the North American continent, devastates the entire coastline of Mississippi. All the world was reading about our plight. Other front page news had to take a back seat. All others except Las Vegas, that is. Their local headlines read, Elvis Presley, his return to Las Vegas for a one-month engagement at the International Hotel draws record-breaking crowds. The showroom, with a capacity of 2,000, had to be upgraded to a capacity of 3,500 in order to accommodate the overflow. Hurricane Camille, a billion-dollar catastrophe, was not just another storm. She was a killer. Biloxi and its neighboring cities along the coast took the full force of the storm's 200-mile-plus winds for almost 5 hours. A local apartment complex a stone's throw from water's edge was completely destroyed, killing all but one of the 23 people who had refused to heed multiple warnings from police and civil defense, and instead moved all their furnishings to a top floor in preparation for a hurricane party. Many of the finest homes on the coast, which had weathered other hurricanes throughout the past 100 years, lost everything from their foundations. A total of 141 lives were lost on the Mississippi Gulf Coast alone. The peninsula of Biloxi, literally cut off from the rest of the world by collapsed bridges, downed power lines, and trees, was a living hell. Emergency crews from neighboring states worked for weeks trying to restore power, and the Red Cross, Salvation Army, and one charitable organization I remember well, the Seventh-day Adventist, worked around the clock bringing in drinking water, ice, food, and clothing for the needy. Fabian, worried about his many friends and family stranded on the peninsula, hitched up his fishing skiff and outboard motor and drove to the north side of Biloxi Bay. He spent most of his time ferrying food and water to the loved ones. Feeling he could do more if he didn't have me and the children to take care of, he drove us to Mobile, Alabama, and put us on a plane to Las Vegas to stay with his brother Wally. I actually have to stop this video and restart it. I'm having trouble talking, but I'm also stopping it to make sure the battery doesn't die. All right, I had to get it started back up again. My battery, surprisingly, 2 hours of reading, it's not dead at all. It's half full. All right, so hopefully I can finish this book. Just another 5-6 pages, something like that, 7 pages, without stuttering a bunch of words. That's what happens when you read 2 hours straight. Wally had become friends with Elvis back in '58 when Elvis sat at Wally's table to play blackjack. Wally and Elvis were a lot alike, tall, handsome. They both had a way with the ladies. Wally introduced himself to Elvis by announcing that his brother was married to June Wanico. Now, Elvis later introduced Wally to Joe Esposito, and the three became fast friends, managing to get together when Elvis was in Vegas. Wally had worked his way up and was now a casino boss at the International Hotel where Elvis was headlining. And headlining he was. Everywhere you looked, you could see enormous billboards flashing only one name, Elvis. I had been to Las Vegas many times, but had never seen promotion like that. Not only the Strip, but the airport and all the roads leading to the city were dotted with billboards screaming, Elvis, Elvis, Elvis. Knowing we had our favorite entertainers, Fabian's brother always kept us informed as to who was headlining, so we could plan our trips accordingly. Well, I knew Barbra Streisand had been at the International, and I was hoping that she would still be there. I had no idea Elvis was going to be in Las Vegas until I stepped off the plane and that same old nervous feeling in my stomach returned. By this time, Elvis was a living legend. After the luxury of shampoo and shower, I learned that Wally, without asking, had picked up the phone and used his connections to get us tickets to see Elvis the first night I was in town. Now, I could have easily rested my elbows on the stage. We were so close. The house lights dimmed, and the orchestra opened with a goosebump rendition of the theme from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Elvis made his entrance wearing a white jumpsuit, looking positively flawless. Still the best-looking man I had ever laid my eyes on. I'd never liked his dyed black hair, even though that didn't take away from his resplendence. CC Rider was his opening song, and he sang it like he was at one with the beat. He was electrifying. His left leg was doing double time to the rhythm, more of a quiver than a beat. My first thought was, dear God, if his leg is going this fast, how fast is his heart beating? I had overheard some people in the showroom talking about how thin he was and how fast he was moving. They thought he had to be on some kind of drug. No way, I thought. Not my Elvis. He was too smart for that. But hearing the same remarks from more than a few people did bother me. I could hear my mother's voice inside my head. Elvis is a grown man, June. He can take care of himself. Sure, he was a grown man. He was 34 years old. Why did I still see him as a little boy? Now, covering every inch of the stage, Elvis walked in the direction of our table, and everyone stood up, including me. When he got close, at least a dozen or so fans ran up from behind me, stepped in my chair, and pushed me face down on the table. They were using my back as a step to get on the stage. Wearing a fashionable miniskirt, I was more concerned with my safety than the fact that my butt was visible to everyone behind me. Wally quickly pushed himself between me and the stampeding fans. We both had bruises on our backs from the high-heeled shoes. Good Lord. Elvis quickly went back to deep center stage out of harm's way. The show stopped long enough for security guards to escort unruly fans from the stage. How foolish I was to think the fans would grow up. As soon as we arrived home after the show, Wally phoned backstage at the International and paged Joe Esposito, telling him I was in town and wanting to talk to Elvis. When Wally handed me the telephone, Joe was on the other end. Is that you, June? Joe asked. Hold on, I'll get Elvis for you. Holding a cocktail in my hand and having had several at the show, I wasn't the least bit nervous. It had been such a long time, I wondered what I would say. June, is that you, honey? Elvis asked. Yes, Elvis, it's me, and don't call me honey, I answered. You haven't changed a bit, have you, baby? He laughed. I changed a little, hopefully for the better, and you've changed a little too. I saw your show tonight, and gosh, you look better than ever. Your voice is better than ever too, Elvis. I was impressed, I said, knowing Elvis loved praise, and this came from my heart. Thanks, June. Coming from you, that makes me feel so good. You've been on my mind the past few days. Did you and your family survive the hurricane okay? Well, we had some damage, but nothing compared to the people. The sad part of it is that there's nothing left of the beach. The sun and sand is gone. The cocoa's gone. The only thing left is the White House Pier. The only thing left of the White House Pier is a few broken pilings. You do remember that White House Pier, don't you? I remember it, June, well. I remember it well, June. As a matter of fact, I remember it like it was yesterday. How was Gus Stevens' lounge? Did Mr. Gus make it okay? He asked, remembering Gus had rolled out the red carpet for him on every visit. A miraculous thing happened to Mr. Gus. A tractor trailer washed up, blocking the wind and surging tides from his huge front windows, and he had only minor damage. He's still keeping his doors open to anyone needing food, water, ice, sharing his good fortune, so to speak. What about Golf Hills? How did they do? Not too bad. The villas are all gone, and so is the boat dock. The hotel and the hack house are still standing. How about you, June? Are you happy? Do you need anything? If there's anything I can do for you, baby. I'm fine, Elvis. If things got any better, I couldn't stand it, I answered, using the same reply I always use when asked that question, even when it wasn't necessarily the truth. I've seen a few of your movies and your acting is improving, I lied, thinking to make him feel good about his acting career. The movies are shit, and you know it, June. I'm just still spinning my wheels. His voice was the same, but his diction had definitely improved. 10 years ago, Elvis would have said, I'm just spinning my wheels. I guess congratulations are in order. You have a beautiful wife and a baby girl. That's June actually talking. June says, I guess congratulations are in order. You have a beautiful wife and a new baby girl. All you need now is a little boy, and your wife will be complete. Whoa, June, don't rush me. I'm still trying to get used to being a daddy. Yours must be pretty big now. How old are they? You still just have two, right? Right. Tony's 11, Tori's 7. They're both beautiful, I replied, like the proud mother I was. 7 and 11, huh? They'd be great at a crap table. I forget I said that, June. My mouth's going 90 to nothing. I'm so hyped up, and I've got another show to do before I can unwind. I noticed how hyper you are on stage. Are you on something? Sorry. Are you sure you're okay? She didn't say that. She said, are you sure you're okay? Is there anything I can do for you? How are you unwinding these days? Don't worry about me, baby. When I need to unwind, I just go to bed and read a good book. What are you reading? Anything good? June, you wouldn't believe if I told you. On second thought, maybe you would. A long time ago, someone very special gave me a book to read, and I've read it at least 1,000,000 times, June. It's my favorite book. I try to keep a copy with me at all times. It's my unwinder, he laughed. I was so surprised I couldn't think of a thing to say. I knew he was talking about The Prophet. Ain't it funny how time slips away? Shit, baby, I didn't mean to go and get some sentimental. How's everyone going in Biloxi? How's your mother and Mr. Bellman? They're all fine, Elvis. Everybody's fine, I answered, only half hearing his question. My mind was still on the book. I still see Pat every once in a while, and how's my old friend Buddy Conrad doing? I used to see him all the time, but not lately. He's the joker who told me about your name, naming your son Elvis. Buddy died a few years ago, Elvis. He had cancer. Damn. Why is it the good die young, June? Why? Damn, I sure hate hearing about that, about good old Buddy. I really liked old Buddy. Elvis said and then paused, apparently at a loss for words. The last few days of his life, all he talked about was you and the good old days. Everything was EP this and EP that. He was grateful for the time we all had together. I'm grateful too, June. They were the best years of my life. Listen, baby, I'll be here for another week, so if you need anything, just give me a call. Just ask for Joe. How long are you going to be in Vegas? I'm not sure, Elvis, at least until the power's restored back home. We live in the country, and without power, we got no water and no air conditioning either. You live in the country, June. Do you have any horses? Yeah, we got 3 horses, 2 cows, but no chickens. You know how I feel about chicken poop, I replied, laughing. You haven't changed at all, June. I'm real happy for you, baby. You got your ranch after all. It's not really a ranch, Elvis. We call it Oleo Acres, a low-cost spread. Oh, that's good, June. Sounds just like you. Are you sure there's nothing I can do for you, baby? I'm sure, Elvis. Thanks for asking, though. I don't want to keep you on the phone. I know how busy you are. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Take care of yourself, Elvis. I love you. I love you too, June. Take care, baby. The neon lights atop the International Hotel were clearly visible from Molly's front door, and I thought of calling many times during the next 10 days, but I never did. On the way to the airport, I noticed all the billboards with Elvis's name had been taken down. Elvis had left the city. Epilogue. Weekend of July 4th, 1977. After an absence of over 10 years, my friend Pat was in town for a surprise visit. A few mutual friends had arranged a 4th of July celebration in her honor. We had lots of catching up to do and talked and laughed for hours. As usual, the conversation turned to the good old days with Elvis. June, you know Elvis is now 42 and not in the best of health, Pat told me. Next month is the anniversary of his mother's death, and I'm really worried about him. I'm really worried. If you remember correctly, Gladys was 42 years old when she died on August 14th. And you of all people know Elvis, how Elvis was with his premonitions of death concerning himself or his mother. Call it superstition or whatever, but there's something about their ages being the same. He might have a hard time dealing with it. Maybe he won't deal with it at all. It really worries me, June. I think we should go to Memphis and see if there's any way we can help. She was no longer laughing. Elvis is surrounded by people looking out for him, Pat. What good could we possibly do? Well, I know he's surrounded by people, June, but do they understand Elvis the way we do? Do they care enough? You know how Elvis can be when someone tells him something he doesn't want to hear, but he'll listen to you, June. He always did. This whole misnomer, I think I'm saying the right word, about Gladys being 42, we know that on her gravestone she's 46. My brother Tommy didn't think he would live past the age 42 because he was a huge Elvis fan. My mother died at 46. But really, was Gladys really 42 or 46? I think there's some confusion around that. Maybe back in those days, people faked their ages. We have the issue with Lucy DeBarban, too. You know, a lot of people don't think that she was as young as it says in the book, and that may be correct. Doesn't make the story much any different, really, but there was something about women and their ages back then. Excuse me. Surprised by Pat's intuition, I found it hard to believe what I was hearing. We were both so in tune with Elvis and each other's thoughts, it was frightening. Well, do you think you can get away for a few days or what? I don't know, Pat. I'll have to talk to Fabian. He'll probably think I'm crazy, but I'll see what I can do. The hostess brought out a steaming platter of boiled shrimp and crawfish and placed it between me and Pat. I was so preoccupied with thoughts of how to swing a trip to Memphis I couldn't eat a thing. I knew Fabian would not be happy about it. My thoughts then turned to Red West. If only Red were still with Elvis. Whenever Elvis was in any kind of trouble, Red had always been there for him. I always thought that if anyone truly loved Elvis Presley, it was Red West. Elvis and Red had gone their separate ways in July of '76, just a year earlier. Close friend and bodyguard for over 20 years, Red had a better relationship with Elvis than any relative. Suddenly I had a flash of inspiration. We wouldn't have to go to Memphis. Elvis was coming to Biloxi. In the middle of the excitement and seeing all my friends, it had completely slipped my mind. Elvis was scheduled to be the very first performer to give a concert in our newly completed Gulf Coast Coliseum. The entire city was buzzing. How appropriate for Elvis to do the honors. He had made many friends along the coast, and now he would be coming home, back to where it all began. Biloxi finally had a place large enough to accommodate the thousands who would turn out to see him. Soon it was settled. I was on the phone to Pat, giving her the exact date, and she would fly in for the weekend. My 15-year-old daughter, Tori, had been after me for months, not only wanted to see Elvis in concert, but also to go to backstage and meet him in person, of course. Tori had been hearing about Elvis Presley, not from me, but from others, as far back as the first grade. By the time she reached the fourth grade, she managed to sneak one of my scrapbooks to school to show and tell. Well, with all the tight security surrounding Elvis, my daughter's main concern was how we were going to let him know we were in the crowd of thousands. 2 years earlier, in mid-'75, my first cousin George went to see Elvis in concert in Shreveport, Louisiana, and took his wife along with a sign that she made on poster board. The sign simply read, "My name is Juanico." Within minutes, Elvis's interest on stage, 2 security men working for Elvis approached the couple with a poster and asked for me, wanting to escort me backstage. I was sure if all else failed, the same trick would work for both of us. I couldn't wait to see the look on Elvis's face when he saw Tori. She was the image of me the first time we'd met over 20 years earlier, but it never came to pass. The dedication and grand opening of the Coast Coliseum, featuring Elvis Presley in concert, was scheduled for September 1977, 1 month after he died. If in the twilight of memory we should meet once more, we shall speak again together, and you shall sing to me a deeper song. The Prophet, Khalil Gibran. Chokes me up. Well, we made it to the end of the book. Thanks for sticking with me on this. And thanks for being on this journey with me. I know you all love Elvis as much as I do. All right, TCB TLC. Till next time, this is Joe Sims Rivers Photos. Appreciate all y'all very much. Wonderful book. Y'all should pick up a copy of this if you can on Amazon or eBay. It's probably worth it. It's definitely worth a read uninterrupted. It took me a long time to get this book finished. Oh, all right, TCB TLC. I just realized I'm supposed to pick my son up at 12:30. I make it in time. It's 12:12. Gonna pick him up early on a Friday. He had testing this week for TCAP, and last week and did great. So I'm going to reward him with an early day at school. Till next time, Joe sent Forever's photos. Thanks again. Bye bye.